this should work. And you took this job under these terms. Russell Wilson was not forced upon you.
That's a key.
You took the job. You took the job. You know what I mean? So you had to sit at your house while looking at that contract offer and going over the depth chart and thinking, okay, well, I can work with Russell Wilson. You didn't call him. You didn't try to get to know the guy beforehand, because it seems like almost immediately you were using him as a scapegoat. You know what I mean? It seemed like, like all these reporters are saying, oh, well, Sean and Russ don't really, there's tension in the building, and then there's tension on the sidelines, and they're getting it on film and they're yelling at each other. And it's like, well, did you not do any research, or did you just see the $18 million contract and go, boom, yeah, I'll come back. Why not? You could have waited 1 year and going to work with Justin Herbert. You knew Brandon Staley was going to get fired. That's the job you really wanted. We all read between the lines of the Cowherd shows when he would say that, oh yeah, Sean Payton's got his eye on one job, and I think we all know which that one is. I can't say, but he likes the sunny LA weather, and Justin Herbert 6'5". It's like, we all knew what it was. So
he loves coming to Southern California to my studio and visiting me, and I could see him staying around here a little longer, if you know what I mean. I don't have any sources that are official yet, but that's what we're hearing.
That is literally what we heard.
So thinly veiled.
That is what you and I heard for. I mean, year. every week of the football season when he would come in. So I'm just kind of like, what? Where do you fit in all of this? Like, are you really that guy? Are you a bit of a Drew Brees merchant, or was Drew Brees a bit of a Sean Payton merchant? I'm not sure. These teams were great. Was it more on Drew Brees? Was it more on Sean Payton? I don't know. I wasn't, very closely watching the Saints during those runs. So, if Saints fans find this, please enlighten us, because I'm confused as to why you can look at this roster as it was when you took that job, and now you were stuck in the situation where you have Zach Wilson, you traded for Zach Wilson. I'm sorry, but what do you see in that kid? You have Jared Stidham on the team, who was like maybe going to be your starter last year. Like, there was already talks in camp of like, oh, we brought Stidham in to like compete with Russ, and everybody's like, what are you talking about? And then you just drafted Bo Nix. So like, what is it? What's the plan here? That's what mind boggles me about Sean Payton. I think if he would have just stayed retired, the lore is alive and well, right? He's got this reputation of being this great coach who won, multiple division titles in the NFC South, and then, obviously won that Super Bowl. But now I have to take it back. You're going up against Andy Reid, who, I think by all metrics is probably the second best coach ever. You're going against now you have Jim Harbaugh to go against, and then you have Antonio Pierce, who, is kind of like Black Dan Campbell. He's just like a guy you want to run through a brick wall for. And you might get left behind. And I don't know how that bodes well for you moving forward in your legacy and how you are perceived as a coach. It would be really gross to see you go out sad. And I hope you don't. I hope that Bo Nix is right, but I think you're a bit cocky, and I think you ended the season with a lot of egg on your face, and I can't ignore the egg. I can't look at the Super Bowl, the Lombardi Trophy in your case and go, yeah, but I see the egg fully on your face, so I can't ignore that. But yeah, that's just kind of my rant. I don't know what to make of Sean Payton. I don't know why he would do this, and I wish he would explain it, honestly. I'm at a loss.
No, I'm with you. I think, why do we take risks when we're young, right? We take risks when we're young so that we can build, the career legacy and the career prestige that when we're older, we don't have to take those risks. What's really interesting to me is when, Sean Payton comes from the Bill Parcells coaching tree, which is a very, very, very legendary coaching tree and a very legendary coach. One, you touched on Mike Tomlin as a comparison. One massive difference between Mike Tomlin and Sean Payton in terms of their kind of 2010s, 2000s legacies is that Mike Tomlin inherited, a very put together situation with great ownership, a great franchise, and from a head coach in Bill Cowher.
Bill Cowher,
Yeah,
super powerhouse. Yeah.
Yeah, who had won a Super Bowl just a couple years earlier. They were perennial contenders during the Jerome Bettis years. I mean, they were a very, very good football team. And to his credit, he did win a Super Bowl, and they did take it up a notch, after a bit of a lull. But it was a very different situation for Sean Payton. When we talk about, the calendar year 1993, 1992 was the last time since the year 2000. So 1992 and 2000 were the only times, and since before 2006, when Sean Payton took over the job, that team had a winning season. So we're talking about 2 winning seasons between 1992 and 2006.
That's rough.
And when we talk about Drew Brees, it's difficult to unpack because Drew Brees was a decent quarterback in San Diego, but he had a shoulder problem, and he was just trying to get a contract with Miami Dolphins. They brought him in, and they ended up not signing him. It was a big kind of storyline back in the day. A lot of people don't remember this, but I was a kid, and it became this kind of situation where Sean took the job, and they ended up bringing in Drew Brees, and it was just this kind of magical cocktail. I do believe that for our generation, Sean Payton is one of the best coaches in the National Football League, mythos, so to speak. And a lot of it did have to do with Drew Brees, but Drew Brees wasn't exactly Tom Brady when he took over that job in New Orleans. And he also hadn't been an established starter like Ben Roethlisberger, which is what Mike Tomlin inherited, right? But when I ask, why do we take these risks when we're young, when we talk about Sean Payton now, taking this job to me is confusing to say the least. And I know that you touched on it, but outside of the money, I can't understand for the life of me why he took this job. He didn't have to. And when I say that, I mean that. A lot of coaches, there's been a lot of turnover in the NFL the last couple of seasons. And I would say for my money, he's probably been the belle of the ball. Him and Jim Harbaugh have kind of been the 2 big names in terms of like established, kind of like young swings, so to speak, that the last few coaching cycles have been brought up as potential coaches. He could have gotten probably any job in the league this past season. And I think there's a fair amount of teams that were on the edge that would have fired their coach had they had a conversation with him prior. This was an unnecessary risk. I understand $18 million is $18 million, but it's not like he needed the money. And even if he needed the money, he could have waited, just a little bit and gotten a better offer. And the reason why I say that is because just from a schematic perspective, it doesn't make any sense to take over this job knowing that you are locked into this much Russell Wilson money. If you want to rebuild, you take a job with the rebuilding team that has the draft capital and the cap space to rebuild, right? I understand the idea of going, you know what, F it. I'm not going to take over a good team. I'm going to rebuild again, just like I did in New Orleans, and I'm going to do it twice. I get that. But then take over a job like Washington this past season. Take over a job where you have the mobility and the high draft capital to restart and build this thing from the ground up, Sean Payton style. So taking this job to me doesn't make any sense. Moving on from Russell Wilson after a contentious year doesn't make any sense because, you said it perfectly. You knew the deal going in. You knew the roster. You knew the cap situation. You knew the quarterback situation. And Russell Wilson doesn't do what Sean Payton's system is. You can talk to any, former player, listen to any former offensive player who played with Sean Payton, particularly quarterbacks. He runs a very, very, very quarterback-friendly system, but it is a system. It is a timing system. It is an intermediate system. It's a system, and Russell Wilson doesn't run system football. So the whole situation is confusing to me, and you're right. I hope that we don't end up with a situation where this guy tarnishes his legacy, but just because you were something doesn't mean you are something. Totally and agree. I think Patriots fans learned that the hard way the past couple of years with Bill Belichick, who is the greatest of all time. Sorry, you guys can continue to, pour dirt on his legacy because he sucked after Tom. But the reality is he is the greatest head football coach of all time, and he was dog shit the last 2 seasons, complete garbage.
Yep.
And if it can happen to him, it can happen to you, right? It's one of those situations. And you're right. I mean, it's really well said by you, and I don't have much else to add besides that. I think it's just a puzzling decision from a guy who definitely wasn't in a desperate spot. You know, his agent and himself, you know, they had a ton of room to negotiate over a couple of years with different teams. Tons of ball clubs would have hired this guy. So it's a weird situation because you can't rebuild and you can't really, and you don't like what's in there already. So why take the job?